Welcome to The Explainer. Okay, let's start with the big question. What if everything you thought was essential for a stable society, things like government, money, even the family unit, what if those were actually the very things holding us back from being truly free? Well, today we're going to dive into a pretty radical theory that says exactly that to find real liberty, we need to completely reprogram society as we know it.
The whole philosophy we're looking at today really hinges on this one powerful idea. The author's point is, forget about trying to convince people to be better. Stop the moral preaching. Instead, you've got to build better systems, better programs that just naturally lead to the right outcomes.
And look, this isn't just some abstract philosophical idea. To make this concept really hit home, the author points to a fascinating historical example. It's a case where a tiny change to the program had, quite literally, life-or-death consequences.
All right, so let's go back to the 1700s. Britain's got a problem. They're shipping convicts over to Australia, but the journey is so brutal that a shocking number of people just aren't surviving it.
So the government's first instinct was to, appeal to people's better nature. They put officials on the ships to keep an eye on things, but that didn't work. The captains just bribed them. The death toll stayed sky high. So they realized trying to change the people was a lost cause. Instead, they changed the program. They totally flipped the payment model. Instead of paying captains for every convict who got on the ship in England, they started paying them for every convict who walked off the ship, alive and well, in Australia.
And just look at the result. It was absolutely incredible. The change was immediate, it was dramatic. The death rate went from a horrifying 12% all the way down to just 1%. Think about that. Same captains, same ships. The only thing that changed was the program.
Okay, so this story about the convict ships, it's really just a powerful analogy for a much, much bigger idea. The author's whole point is that this is a universal principle. If we can get smart about redesigning the program, the basic incentive structures of our society, we could potentially solve some of our biggest, most stubborn problems. We're talking everything from how we care for our elderly all the way up to how entire nations avoid going to war.
So that leads to a pretty obvious question, right? If the answer is that simple, just change the program, then why are we still stuck? Why are we still dealing with the same old problems? Conflict, inequality, unhappiness, generation after generation.
Well, according to the author, it's because we are trapped. We're all stuck inside a flawed program, a system that makes true freedom impossible. And when they say impossible, they mean for everyone. Not a single person, not a president, not a billionaire, not you, not me, has ever been completely free. And the reason why, they argue, is baked into the very foundations of how we live.
So what are these foundations? The text we're examining today points to 8 things we think of as the fundamental pillars of our society. But here's the twist. It argues they're not pillars holding us up. They're barriers holding us in.
And here they are, the 8 barriers. And just a heads up, this list is meant to be provocative. We're talking about the state, money, marriage, family, kinship, those emotional ties, government, debt, and even the ego, our own self-attachment. I mean, just think about that for a second. These are the very institutions and ideas we're told are absolutely essential. But this theory flips that on its head and calls them the very architecture of our prison.
So, the key takeaway here isn't that we need to fix these things. No, the argument is much more radical. It's that as long as these 8 factors exist, period, they will always be the root of the problem. And as long as they're here, true freedom for everyone is just impossible. So if you can't fix them, what do? Well, the author doesn't mess around with small tweaks or reforms. The proposal is to scrap the whole thing and start over. A complete system replacement. A total reboot for all of humanity.
And this new system has a name, the Second Homeland. It's presented as a completely new model for how to live and produce things. And get this, the author claims this isn't just some fantasy. They say it's a practical model that's actually been tested and put into practice by a small community since way back in 2009.
Okay, so what would this new program actually look like in the real world? What would our lives be like if you just erased those 8 barriers? Let's take a look at the fundamental changes. This really breaks it down. You can see the entire foundation of society just gets turned upside down. The social unit is no longer the nuclear family, it's the community. We don't have nation-states anymore, we have global coordination. And the whole idea of money and private property, that's gone, replaced by shared resources for everyone.
I mean, the goals here they're huge, they're absolute. The whole point of this new program is to systematically take apart everything the author sees as a source of conflict and waste.
It's a vision of a world without borders, where all of humanity works together as one single team.
So, what we're left with is a pretty stark choice. Do we keep trying to patch up a broken program that, according to this theory, can never really work? Or do we consider a radical reboot like this? It's an idea that forces you to question everything you think you know about how society has to be. And it leaves us with one last big provocative thought. What if the rules we all live by aren't the only rules possible?